Hello, and thank you for listening to the History of World War II podcast, episode 581. For better or ill, the hosts of the Warrior Next Door podcast once again grace us with their presence, and they bring some clips where they have interviewed veterans from World War II, of course, the real heroes of all the story. So Ryan Fairfield, Tony Lupo, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ray. Yeah, it's becoming like a holiday tradition for us. Every November we get together and absorb copious amounts of your abuse while we like wedge our way onto your show. It's fantastic.
Abuse, I think the word you're searching for is charm. But I could be wrong. I don't know. No, you're right. This is a tradition, though, because it's like, you have your turkey dinner or whatever. You feel bloated and you want to die. So, no, this is exactly like that experience. No, is this your third, fourth?
It's our fourth.
Fourth.
This is our fourth anniversary of being on your fine podcast. I mean, we mean that seriously. To be on the most listened to World War II podcast in the world is freaking quite an honor. And that's why we accept all the abuse. And we also accept the abuse because it's generally true and we just have to own it.
Yeah. You can't get angry.
There's no reason to run from it. It's like, well, yeah, Ray's right. I am.
Tony abuses me and I abuse Tony, but we never listen to each other.
Then we can do
so
it.
To have a third party tell us, it kind of hits a little harder.
Yeah, it's a reinforcing mechanism.
Exactly. You can't get angry if it's accurate. That's always been my motto. You know what I'm saying? Oh, and speaking of what they got, merchandise now. You got the mug there.
That's beautiful. And I see a PO underneath the shirt there. I see a warrior.
Oh, does that fit okay?
I see it's tight. Look at that. It's sweet. Look at the pecs on that guy.
So I have to do push-ups all the time.
What are you benching now, Ray? What are you benching now?
I don't actually bench. I just do push-ups. So
like 200.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, per week. Throw your kids on your back while you're doing it. You clap when you.
Yeah, when they were younger, it was fun and cute, and now it actually hurts. So because they're big, yeah. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I could, just for listeners who maybe haven't, heard this episode before, because podcasts can be listened to in any manner or order of things.
Right.
So, Ryan and I just started the Warrior Next Door podcast about 4.5 years ago now, Ryan, is that right?
Yeah. Like August or September of 21 or something like that.
Yeah, oh, wow.
And our little teeny space on the podcast sphere focuses on oral histories primarily from veterans, mostly from World War II, generally all of them from our neighborhood or around the area that Ryan and I lived in as we moved around. Ryan and his family and my family are in the energy sector, and so we've had a chance to kind of move around a place like Houston and Tulsa and now Denver and whatnot. And it seemed like every time that our company relocated us, we were able to reconnect with veterans from that community. So we decided to name this The Warrior Next Door. And it features the oral histories from people we've interviewed, well over 200 in total. Right. And we have a couple on tap for you today. So every year what we try to do is just share some excerpts from some of our interviews, either ones that we featured recently, ones that will be featured, or in the case for the ones I pulled today, ones that we have not featured yet. This will be a world premiere on the Warrior Next Door, not the Warrior Next Door podcast, on the History of World War II podcast.
Well, that's all. Yeah. No, I appreciate. No, I really do appreciate that. Something that hasn't been shared yet. So I'm very honored. Thank you very much.
So, Ryan, do you have anything you want to add some color or a little bit of foreshadowing to some of the people that we're going to share today?
Well, I know personally, so Tony and I, basically how we do this is we take turns. Like, Tony will pick a guy from his arsenal. I'll pick a guy from mine. And I got to thinking, we've been doing this with Ray for several years now. And some people are listening to both podcasts now. Not all, we welcome any of Ray's listeners that want to just give us a try. But, we thought, well, instead of featuring some that they may have just heard if they're listening to our podcast, I went back in time to an earlier veteran that we interviewed. His name's Obie O'Brien, and he's a P-51 Mustang Ace from the war. And we'll get into him a bit later in the program. But I thought it would be a really interesting one for people to listen to because we haven't featured him yet. and he's not a recent one. He's probably from 2 or 3 years ago. So, but yeah, and then Tony's got a really interesting one that I think we'll go ahead and kick everything off with.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll start with John Laughlin. He was a lieutenant during World War II and the Korean War,
Right.
but we're going to focus on what he did during World War II. He was in the U.S. Signal Corps, and he fought. His job was to work with the 102nd Infantry Division, which was on a very northern flank of Germany,
Right.
and an interface between Britain and the forces to the north there, and the American forces to the south.
Okay.
We have not featured this person on our podcast as of yet, and this will be a world premiere, so to speak, for a firsthand personal account of something that is very serious. John had a chance as a member of the Signal Corps to document something called the Garde-Legion Massacre. And instead of me talking about this event and what happened, we're going to let him do it. And we're going to start off with this this first clip. Now, this is going to be for podcasts and for YouTube or something. So there's video associated with this. There's photos that he took during the war. These are from his camera of this event. Some of the things he says, and definitely some of the things you'll see for your audience, Ray, when you get a chance to see this on YouTube or wherever you post it, is extremely disturbing. So we just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that before we continued.
Thank you.
So with that being said, Ryan, go ahead and launch the first clip.
After VE Day, after the war was over there, I became aware of a situation nearby, a few miles, where the Germans had been using a number of Polish people as workers, or whatever they used them for. And the Germans knew that the war was about to end, so they herded all these Polish people into this barn and set it on fire. Jeez. And then the Germans set up a machine gun outside the door to the barn, and as Polish people would try to get out under the door and get out from the fire, the Germans would shoot them with their machine gun.
And so were these photos taken by you?
I took these pictures.
Okay, and this is the aftermath of what you just described. Okay.
That's a picture of the side of the barn.
And of course, these objects near the barn that's been scorched are human remains, I'm afraid.
And this right here, editorial comment, this is taken from a wiki article right here. This is that barn. And so he was standing next to that door to the left. And what did he see? It was in the town of Gardelegen, which is north central Germany, near Hanover. And there was a lot of concentration camps in this area. And I think when people think concentration camps, they think Jewish people, and that is not always true. The Germans had millions of POWs and people they considered ne'er-do-wells in these work camps, and they worked them to death.
Yeah.
And so who were these people that were put into this barn? You're going to see more pictures of the aftermath of that in the next clip. Who were these people that were put into this barn that he saw? And I was able to look at that photo, and then I went on to ChatGPT and I typed in, German massacres, barn burning, Polish people, and the Gardelegen massacre came up right away. And then that photo that's part of this article, it's like, wow, this is that picture that he took. The difference is in this photo that's in the article, you can see where some of the mass graves are, and the bodies that you saw in the photo weren't there. They were cleaned up by then. But the bottom line is on April 3rd through the 4th, following the U.S. Army's cross of the Rhine River as they pushed into Nazi Germany, some of these SS camps, specifically the one called Dorel Mittelbau, ordered an evacuation of prisoners. They had about 4,000 prisoners that they wanted to move away from the Allied. And from what I've read, maybe you guys read the same thing. It's like, why do the Germans spend so much time moving POWs and concentration camp survivors? And a lot of it had to do with this idea that Hitler had, that he could use it for collateral if they sued for some sort of brokered peace, which never happened, right? Because he ended up surrendering unconditionally. But within days, some 4,000 people that were held in this camp, its satellite camps, and from other camps in the area, they had to deboard from freight cars. So the idea was, we're going to take these 4,000 POWs, these workers, we're going to put them in these cars, and we're going to bring them up north. But on their way up north, the Allied planes, at this point in the war, this is, like I said, April 3rd through 4th, 1945. This is late in the war, right before Germany surrendered. We had complete control of this, guys, the transportation network. They couldn't go any farther. We had blown up the trains and the track and the infrastructure. So what happened next is they took these prisoners out, and there's 1,000 of them who were the sickest, the most difficult to move. And they were still greatly outnumbered. These prisoners outnumbered the SS guards. So the SS guards went into the town of Gardelegen, and they recruited auxiliary forces to help them with this massacre from the local fire department, from the Air Force, from the aged Home Guard, the Volkssturm, and from the Hitler Youth.
Right.
So they got these people to help watch him, round him up, put him in there. And then on April 13th, more than 1,000 of these prisoners, many of them sick and too weak to march any further, were taken from the town of Gardelegen to a large barn on an estate just outside of that. They were forced inside the building. The assembled guards then barricaded the doors and set fire to the gasoline-soaked straw. Those who escaped the conflagration by digging under the barn walls were killed by guards. The next day, the SS and the local auxiliaries returned to dispose of the evidence of their crime, but they weren't able to do it because of the swift advance by the 102nd Infantry Division, which is the division that John Laughlin was a part of. And in fact, the next day after they burned the barn, and you're going to see more photos and more commentary on this in just a second.
Right.
The next day, April 14th, the 102nd entered Gardelegen, found this, and the U.S. Army Signal Corps, and that's who John was an officer of. The photographers were allowed, they arrived there and they photographed what they saw there. They wanted to make sure that they did that. And it was just a matter of a couple of days before a lot of these official photographs were published in the New York Times and the Washington Post of the massacre.
The one thing I always wonder with these situations like this, where they brought these prisoners on this forced march, and they're running up against the Americans, and they decide they're going to just kill them all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which would in turn seal the fate of the soldiers who are merely a day ahead of the Allied troops. Why wouldn't they just not use that as a goodwill token? Like, hey, we're going to surrender. And by the way, we've got 300 people here that we've kept in good care. Relatively speaking, they're still alive.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And therefore treat us good, hopefully. Yay. But instead they go down this path. Is it because of orders? I would imagine that they come from upon high, and they're like, nope, you must kill these people. I mean, I don't understand the logic.
I don't either. And in fact, there seems to be, so we have a friend from Belgium. His name is Burton Smetkins. He basically uses what Ryan and I do for a living, uses geophysics to look for unexploded ordnance in Flanders so they can build roads and bridges and houses without people getting blown up.
Right.
And he and his American friend, who was in the Gulf War, his name is Shane, and was in 101st Airborne, they're big-time historians. And they're always finding these old battlefield relics and stuff out there with some of this magnetometers and everything that he has. And they seem to have a lot of information, Ray, where they study these massacres with civilian population. And for reasons I don't understand, I don't know if it's just in the German psyche, in the military, in their psyche, but in World War I and World War II, Burton talked a lot of times of these sort of events, these specific MO where you round up people for a variety of reasons. A lot of times it has to do with guerrilla activity or whatnot. And they put him in some sort of a barn or house or a church, and he lighted on fire and machine gun everybody in there. And then what Ryan said makes perfect sense. In almost every case, they try to go back to the scene of the crime and drag out the bodies and then bury them somewhere to try to hide it. So they knew that it was wrong.
Right.
And they try to hide it, but I mean, it almost never works. And these massacre sites exist all across Northern Europe. And you think about what happened in Russia, which is what you're featuring right now. Holy crap. It must have just been apocalyptic.
20 million soldiers and civilians are going to die in Russia before it's all over with. But going back to Ryan's thing, I've heard of several different possible answers, and I'm sure they're all true in different locations. One, hide the evidence, which again doesn't work because the Americans and the British and the Canadians and everyone else and the Russians are coming too fast. Hide the evidence, bargaining chip. And also, and for the more extreme, this war is almost over. Let's do as much bad things as we can to this group of people that we can, because. And the other aspect is, and of course, most of this is going to be discovered because again, the Americans and allies in general are too close. But you are dealing with humans who see what they're doing is the right thing. It might be cruel, but it's the right thing for Germany, for the greater Germany, whatever, the Third Reich. And it's all coming down. And you start to panic. And when you panic, you don't think clearly at all. And just to give a tiny example, I'm currently in North Africa with the Americans have landed Operation Torch. And there's this one hill. There's a series of hills that the 2nd U.S. Corps with Bradley in charge is trying to take. And they eventually take these hills, but the Germans start surrendering because Tunisia is almost over with. North Africa is almost over with. And one German within the group, he's pretending like he's surrendering too, and then he whips out a gun and he shoots several GIs before he himself is gunned down. Well, one, again, for whatever, he made that decision, probably knowing he was going to die. But the one patrol that was going to go back to the place where he came from, the killer came from, an officer looked at the guy who was about to lead the patrol and he goes, I don't think you should have any prisoners when you come back from your patrol. And the guy goes, I understand, sir. No alive prisoners when I come back. And again, it's very human. You want revenge. You get hurt. You want to strike back, whatever. And it's a very emotional thing. I mean, when you've gotten to the point where you're killing each other, obviously it's very, very intense and very emotional. So for Ryan's question, I've heard a whole bunch of different answers. And the one thing that always, because there are instances in late 44 where some people who are controlling camps with American and British pilots in it start treating them better because they're like, oh God, we're going to lose. And so let's be nice to these guys. And for the Polish who were subhuman to the to the Nazi philosophy, no, you don't get to live. Even though I'm going to lose this war, I'm taking you with me. And you're just dealing with humans.
Was this an SS unit, Tony, that did this?
Good point.
It was an SS unit that recruited, excuse me, the Hitler Youth and whatnot. But Ray, you're really nailing on something. So Ryan and I, we met with Burton about a month ago now, and we were talking about these massacres that occurred. Whether it was at Malmedy or the Wereth 11, and Ryan brought up a good point. It's like, well, why do we hear so much about Malmedy when all these other massacres occurred? And Ryan's comment was, well, this happened to GIs. This happened to U.S. soldiers. And you had the press corps following them and, why we fight and all these sort of things. And maybe what happens to the civilians isn't covered as much for a variety of reasons. And I think that's kind of what's going on here. I think this is one of many of these atrocities. And you also touch on something else that I also agree with. Every army that goes to the field for some period of time because of the nature of war does things that aren't necessarily considered particularly chivalrous. Killing prisoners was something that was featured heavily, like in Band of Brothers with Spears, for example. And a lot of people, and if you go to forums that unpack Band of Brothers, even to this day, people are still discovering that and loving it. it's kind of split. Some people are like, yeah, that's what you do in a war. And other people are like, no, we should be better than that. And the other thing that Ryan said, and Burton, is the other difference is the Americans they weren't the occupying force. They were the invading force.
Right.
And as the occupying force, you have a lot more chance of having issues with the civilian population, which leads to punishments like this.
It's going to get personal at some
Exactly.
point. You give it enough time. And it wasn't personal for the Americans, or at least for that particular unit within the Second Corps, until that German did what he did by, I'm surrendering, and then he shoots a whole bunch of GIs. So again, when it gets to the point it's personal, that's where it's hard to re-find peace or stability, because you just want to strike back anyway. But yeah, we're all human. We're all flawed. Some of us, Tony, more than others, but
deeply flawed.
Sorry.
So
Sorry. Go ahead.
So we're gonna Ryan, do you have anything else you want to add before we go to the next clip?
No. I'll hold my fire. I got a few more questions to ask. We'll wait till it wraps up.
That's fantastic. So in the next clip, it's him going through more of these photos, and if there's any part of this that is the most disturbing, it's this portion right here. So go ahead and roll it, Ryan.
And this shows some of the Polacks trying to get out of the barn, and the Germans shot them.
You can see the bullet holes around the poor gentleman who's they're just trying to crawl out of there like animals.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
There's several pictures here.
Okay.
And there's another picture of Polacks who've been killed. Now, how long this had happened before I got there, I don't know for sure. I think it was about a week.
Do you remember about when you were there? Was this or right after?
It was shortly right after the VE Day.
Got it. Okay. So we're talking around May 1945, essentially.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez. Yeah.
What were you feeling when you were taking these pictures? I mean, what was your...
It's almost impossible to describe how the Germans, how anybody could do this. Just absolute murder. That's what it was. Another item, it had been a few days, and dead bodies smell. And these guys smelled terrible. Give you some idea how many people were involved.
Oh my gosh.
So how many were involved? It just really quick. I got a paragraph here, and we'll unpack this some more. 1,016 people, of whom the largest number were Poles, were burned alive or shot trying to escape. And you just saw evidence for that in one of the photos he took. Right. Crime was discovered 2 days later by Company F, 2nd Battalion, 405th Regiment of the U.S. 102nd Infantry Division. When the U.S. Army occupied the area, 11 prisoners were found alive and were able to record and share what happened. So they were witness to it. These 11 included 7 Poles, 3 Russians, and a Frenchman.
Right.
So the testimonies of survivors were collected and published in a memoir by Melchior Wankiewicz in 1969. So over 1,000 people were packed into this barn, burned, and shot.
Right. And just real quick, because I've come across this a lot. When you take a large group of people, you can set fire, you can have a machine gun, and as we know, the machine guns are very powerful. But you're not always going to, and I'm not trying to be cruel, but you're not always going to get everyone, because just literally of the mass that you have to go through. And so there tends to be somewhere deep down in the middle or in the back or whatever, a survivor, and they're going to tell their story. And just like you said, Tony, it's going to get out, and people are going to be punished, hopefully punished accordingly.
Yeah. In fact, something I did not include in that is, according to eyewitnesses, 20 men who participated in that massacre. You got to remember, these were firefighters, Hitler Youth, SS guards, that sort of thing, were identified and summarily shot by the Americans. So the Americans didn't wait for some military tribunal. They said, who did this? You better tell us. They rounded up 20 of them and shot all of them.
Yeah.
Like that day, like when they rolled in, people were getting shot. So there was some street justice going on.
Yeah, war is nothing more than Pandora's box. All the rules are gone. All the expectations of civility are gone. And you can decades later go, oh, well, they shouldn't have done that. But if you had been there at that moment, there's a chance you might have done the same thing. It's
I mean, and
yeah.
especially at the very end of the war. You know, this happened at the very end. It wasn't like this was, still, German occupied France and they were being belligerent about having to retreat.
Right.
This is the very end of the war. And, the fact that they still felt like that they wanted or needed to do this, it's like the scene in the movie Fury where, they're rolling into town and they see the children hung from the telephone poles with signs around their neck.
Yes.
And then they say, is this the SS officer with the busted wing that did that? And the Burgermeister's like, yeah. And it's the same thing.
Yes. And that happened, I would imagine, every town, every village that we went through where the Americans and the British and the Canadians saw this atrocity. I think some 1911s were pulled out. A lot of people were shot in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to generalize too much, but we're talking about right now the Western Allies. I've read accounts of what the Russians did on their way in. And let's be honest, I mean, if anybody's got a right, I'm not saying they should, but they certainly felt justified after what happened to Western Russia. So I'm just saying, not only did this happen with the Russians, I'm sure on the scale it might have. I wouldn't be surprised if it was larger and more intense.
100%. I'm always fascinated. I've read a bunch of books about the Eastern Front. I know you're launching to something else now, but when you were started on the Eastern Front, Ray, I was really excited. And I know it's going to take you a long time to finish that. Holy crap. There's so much that happened.
Yeah.
But that's something that everything there was like extra. It was like amped up.
Exactly.
And something else, let's talk about these Polish prisoners really quick. A lot of these prisoners were pulled in when Germany invaded 1939.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
you're right, Ray. They were considered Slavic Untermensch, less than human. And for a significant portion of the war, Germany needed millions of bodies to produce the war material that they just did not have the population for, especially in a two-front war. And initially, the Poles and other countries, I've mentioned here that there was Polish, French, and Russian people in that barn, probably more nationalities. Those were just three that survived to tell the tale.
Right.
A lot of them were working in these labor factories, and they were being worked to death. And as the war went on, the conditions got more and more medieval. They were already terrible when they were caught. But they say that the real history, isn't written by the survivors; it's written in the graveyards. And
I like that.
And it's true. I wish I could unlock some of the memories from one of these Polish men and what they endured from fighting the Germans in 1939 to becoming POWs to going in concentration camps, going to work camp, and then dying like this, like stuffed in a barn and burned to death.
Yeah. Well, that was the plan, to work them to death, literally. Get something out of them and then get rid of them. Sorry. Yeah.
One thing I just want to say, and we'll get to the last clip here, but we touched on the Malmedy massacre and how that became what we all know about as Americans. And I know that there were other, basically quote unquote massacres against, the Allies and everything. I know that then in France after D-Day, there were a group of Canadian soldiers that were executed at a chateau, not far off the beach and everything. And there just doesn't seem to be as many of those accounts. There was the Wereth 11, there's Malmedy, there's the one against the Canadians. I'm sure there are others. Yeah. But you hear about these very large massacres like this as you move further east. And is it just the pressure cooker of all these countries in Europe having different languages and different cultures and centuries of fighting? I mean, obviously World War I was the impetus for a lot of it. Yeah. But it just seems like it just got harsh, more and more harsh towards the neighboring countries. than it did towards the countries across the pond, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think you're right. And we all know that racism isn't something that makes sense. And so this will make sense in that it doesn't make sense. The Germans, as much as they thought they were better than everybody else for cultural reasons and things like that, they did view the British and the French better than they did the Slavs, better than they did the Russians, better than they did the Eastern Europeans. So yeah, so there's going to be more cruelty because it's easier because they're not as good at it as us, or they're not,
They're
you know,
less
you know,
human than us.
exactly,
They're not worth
exactly.
as
And so
much.
Ryan, I think you're exactly right. And I think that just part of, you know, it's like the difference between kicking a beautiful dog and stepping on an ant. To them, it would just, it was less of a big deal.
Yep.
And I know that sounds cruel, but
No,
cruelty is what
no.
we're talking about.
I think that's probably not far off from the way they thought about things. That's kind of where the mind has to go.
That was the other thing. Yeah. Dehumanizing is a very important thing to do in order to do well in war. And they did it well. So anyway, so
Yeah,
you said
like your movie Jojo Rabbit that I watched.
Oh, did you watch it?
Recommended
Okay.
for the top 5.
Yes.
That does a great job in a rather, you know, sardonic, you know, way of satirical way of kind of letting everyone know what they were doing, you know, about with all these characters that they were drawing of the Jewish people and just totally getting into that in their own echo chamber. And it was just pretty amazing. And that's what kind of goes on, obviously, is just for everyone dehumanizing each other.
I guess you have to drink your own Kool-Aid if you want to keep going. And that's what they were doing. So anyway.
100%.
Right.
So this last clip, well, it stands on its own. Go ahead and play it, Ryan.
Now, who took care of these individuals? Who buried them? Who dragged them out?
The Germans dug a big trench and just dumped a whole bunch of these Polish people in this trench. So the GIs who first discovered this atrocity, they went and gathered up a bunch of the local German men. Now, this was elderly men that weren't in the service and young boys, and had them take these Polish people out of the trench the Germans had dug.
So you took basically the local populace and had them
dig these Polacks out and give them a decent burial. Corpse being moved.
Was there any resistance from the local population?
Oh no,
They
none
came willingly
whatsoever.
at that point.
No. So that was the most amazing thing I have ever seen in my life.
I imagine.
One of the things that I was amazed at in the previous clip, I forgot to mention this, was his real emotional reaction.
Yes.
When he was like, I could not believe they did. I mean,
After all those years, it still burns hot with that dude.
Yeah. And you know, there's a lot of, sorry, Ray, I'm just going to say real quick, there was a lot of World War II vets that we've talked to that you really don't hear them get real excited like that guy did. Like,
Right.
You know, so sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and at the time he was probably 18, 20, 21, 22, I don't know, but very young, hadn't seen maybe too much of life yet. And then suddenly he's staring at this. I mean, I imagine it was burned into his memory and into his eye sockets, as they say, and he'll never forget that.
Yeah.
I'd like to read two quick things from the research that I think is a good way to kind of summarize some of this.
Okay.
Thing number one is after the local populace buried the dead, Colonel George Lynch got the German civilians together and said this to them, quote, "The German people have been told that stories of German atrocities were Allied propaganda. Here you can see for yourself. Some will say that the Nazis were responsible for this crime. Others will point to the Gestapo. The responsibility rests with neither. It is the responsibility of the German people. Your so-called master race has demonstrated that it is the master only of crime, cruelty, and sadism. You have lost the respect of the civilized world. End quote.
Very
Accurate.
terse and to the point.
Apt. Yes. Yes.
That's what he said. And then today, if you were to go to Gardelingen and go to the monument, and it's there, in the cemetery, they have individual cemetery plots for all 1,000+ people who were killed there, which is symbolic, right? Because they were stuffed in a barn, they were put in mass graves. What they're trying to show with this cemetery is these are human beings, and each one should be honored with the dignity that a human should be. And here's what's written on a plaque in front of that cemetery. And this speaks, Ryan, to something that you talked about earlier in this section. Quote, "You stand in front of the ruins of a barn where one of the most cruel crimes of fascism was taking place. In the night of their liberation, a few hours before Allied forces approached, 1,016 international fighters of resistance against fascism were brutally and inhumanely burned alive. Whenever you feel apathy or weakness in fighting against fascism, an imperialistic threat of war, get new power from our unforgettable dead."
I like that. Yeah. Because even though it's intimidating to fight something like that, it has to be resisted. It has to be fought back in any way, shape, or form. And I don't want to open up a whole Pandora's box, but if I had been there at the time when those civilians were ordered to give them a proper burial, I could not help but be tempted to go, did you know about any of this?
Yeah.
And who knows what they're going to say? I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not saying they would say yes or no. I'm just simply saying, because that's been one of the contentions, what did the German people know? And it's 1945. They were completely controlled by a totalitarian state. They knew to keep their heads down. So I'm not accusing or whatever. I'm just saying it's those kinds of things that I always find interesting, but I'm not a hero. If I had been living at the time, maybe I would have lowered my head just like, a lot of other people. I don't know. So I'm not judging. I just find it fascinating.
Same.
It's the sort of thing that, we covered with Marta Warner, who was in the Hitler Youth. And she talked about, essentially, her father always told her, keep your mouth shut when you're in school, because she kept asking questions and she kept kind of arguing with the history that she was being retaught. And, it was, there were the neighbors down the street who every morning she would used to say good morning to them. And then one morning the guy comes out and says, no, it's Heil Hitler.
Right.
And she said that that frightened her, and she never forgot how she felt at that moment, which was this, I think a dark feeling of the state taking over, what is going on here.
Yeah.
And in the end, people got along to get along. They did what they had to do. Not saying that they necessarily condoned atrocities, but like she said, if you're a farmer and you wanted to get your grain to plant your crops, you had to go in and you had to say Heil Hitler. You had to toe the party line, or at least appear to.
Right. Well, that's what fascism does. They try to control every aspect of your life, and what they can't control, they indirectly control through fear. If you take good morning away from a little girl, you've done a good job of taking over the very nature of what it means to be German. And they did for many years.
Well, let's hope that these firsthand personal accounts, these photos that when people watch this on YouTube and everything, let's hope that reinforces this idea that it can happen in any civil society, that no one's safe from it. We always have to be on guard for it.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate John Laughlin. His son was there when we conducted this interview back in March of 2007. I thank them for letting me into their house to share this memory and those photos with us. And now, Ryan, I think it might be time to move on to a P-51 fighter ace, huh?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah, a little bit of lighter content. Go ahead, Ray.
Right.
Yeah.
Just real quick, we'll end the first segment with constant vigilance. And then now we're ready to move on. that
All
we're
right.
ready to move on. Yeah.
Got it.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so for our next veteran that we're going to feature is a fellow named Captain William O'Brien, and he had a nickname of Obi for O'Brien.
Obi-Wan.
And,
Sorry,
Obi-Wan,
I had to.
yes,
I had
yeah.
to. I'm sorry. Sorry.
And he flew 51 Mustangs during the war. He was based in England. He flew with the 363rd Fighter Squadron of the 357th Fighter Group of the 8th Air Force, and he was actually stationed in Leiston, England, which is about, I don't know how many miles, but it's a good ways northeast of London, and not far from the coast.
Right.
And have you been there, Ray?
No, I've been to Scotland, but I have not made my way south. I'm taking donations. I'm saving up now, but I have not quite made it south yet.
Well, we'll see if we can make it happen for you.
All right.
So we covered Obi's story way back in January of 2023. It was series number 19.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the original interview. You're talking about our podcast was 2020.
Just the podcast, yeah.
Gotcha.
And you can tell us the year of the interview because I don't have that on here, but featured in series 19. And the first episode of this series was episode 94. So if anybody's out there wondering, hey, I'd like to go listen to this series, that's where it's at. When did we actually interview him, Tony?
Oh, this would have been 2002 in Houston, Texas.
That's right.
I remember going to his house. And we were just starting to interview people. He was one of our earliest interviews. Yep. And we knocked on his door and we were both so nervous. We didn't, because this was like, we're interviewing like a P-51 fighter ace who flew with Yeager. The person who directed us towards him really, said, hey, this guy's pretty amazing.
Right.
And he lets us in. He opens the door and he was wearing blue coveralls.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Blue coveralls.
Suspenders and stuff.
Suspenders, slick back white hair. And he was irascible. He was very direct and
pilots
kind of chomping at us a little bit. And then once we settled down, he opened up. He ended up being a great interview. So I'll never forget that. So that was around 2002.
And what was also interesting is he was a petroleum geologist.
Yes.
And Tony and I didn't know that. And we go there and we find out he went to school after he got out of the war. He went to the University of Tulsa, got his degree in petroleum geology. And it was all areas where Tony and I had already kind of stomped around prior to that.
Right.
So it was pretty interesting
cool.
to meet a guy like him with a big background that's also trying to make his way through the oil industry like we were at the time and stuff. So,
right.
Anyway, so as Tony mentioned, Obi O'Brien flew with Chuck Yeager and Bud Anderson, two very famous P-51 aces from the war. And, this squadron, this fighter group was really known for having a lot of the elite all-star aces in it.
Right.
And these guys, Chuck Yeager was a major during the war. He ended up as a major. Of course, Chuck Yeager of the Right Stuff, fame. He was the guy in the Right Stuff who was passed over to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
And he instead went on to fly Glamorous Glennis, the X-1 plane, to break the sound barrier and be the first man to break the sound barrier.
Not bad.
Not bad. Yeah, still pretty cool.
Screw you, NASA.
But Chuck Yeager was from that movie. Chuck Yeager was kind of the star of the movie in that he was just kind of showed how just because he didn't have a college degree, well, you can't be an astronaut. That's not the kind of, that's not the image we want to project and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, Bud Anderson, who retired as a colonel. Chuck Yeager shot down 12 and a half planes.
Mm-hmm.
You only need 5 to be an ace. He shot down 12 and a half.
Damn.
Colonel Bud Anderson shot down 16 and a quarter.
Wow.
And you think, well, how can you have a half a plane?
Thank you.
Yeah. And a quarter.
I clipped its wing. Right. Sorry.
It's called an assist, essentially.
Okay. All right.
You've got 2 guys ganging up on a plane. You both shoot them down. Well, you get a half.
Think about the sheer terror of the German. We got 2 of these P-51s blasting the shit out of you.
Right.
But anyways, please continue.
Yeah. So Bud Anderson was 16 and a quarter. He's got a great book called To Fly and Fight. Chuck Yeager has his own autobiography called Yeager, and it's his story. They're both fantastic reads. And they both talk about this guy here, Obi O'Brien, in their books, and not very fondly.
It takes all kinds. Well, just for an example, there's 3 of us here. 2 of us get along.
Yeah.
and there's Tony. But
Yeah,
the
that's
point
right.
is,
Yeah.
it's not always going to be simpatico. But when you're up in the air and you're doing your job,
We stick
everything
together,
else-
right? Yeah, we're like
Yeah.
now we're flying high, man. We're diving,
Exactly.
we're ducking and weaving.
I'm the
we're
Obie
shucking,
O'Brien of the
diving.
group. I'm the one that's like, man, we got to take this guy with us. He's such
Yeah.
an a-hole.
Send him
Hey,
in
Todd,
first.
Can I bring my ball and play too?
No, you can't, Tony. Ray and I are going to play.
To give me the ball. Now you go away. No, but no, but see,
Here,
that's
go
just
fetch.
But I love that because, it's like the three of us are sitting here talking, and there's obviously a certain amount of chemistry. The chemistry could have been bad as well. I mean, we've all met someone like right out the gate, I don't like you. And I've certainly met people like that. And so these gentlemen had a job to do, maybe different backgrounds. I don't know. You're about to tell us a little bit more, but yeah, when you're in the cockpit and you're in the air, you've got a mission and you work together, and they did. I kind of just, I mean, I think there should, all those jokes about, oh God, what's his name? Chuck Norris, how awesome he is. I think they should have those same types of jokes about Yeager. That would just be hilarious. But anyway, I'm going to start that campaign right after this show. So anyways, sorry. Cool. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great segue. I mean, this basically, I just wanted to kind of give you an idea that, they always say, if you want to aspire to higher heights, put people around you who push you up, who push you to that, basically. You become who your friends are. Right. So if you got, dirt bags around you, you're probably not going to aspire to get above a certain level in life. Maybe not. Yeah. I wasn't looking at anyone indirectly. No. Okay.
Sorry.
By the way, Ray, you just called all your friends dirt bags, but we'll continue.
That's Dr. Dirtbag to you. No, sorry. Go ahead.
And
but you're right. You acclimatize, or whatever the proper word is, to what is around.
Everybody tries to rise. First of all, when you're in war, you're in, whether you're in the 506, when you're in Easy Company, or whatever unit you're in, if you are an elite unit, you don't want to let your brothers down. You do not want to do it. And when their lives are on the line, that is by far the biggest thing on your mind. And there's a ton of stress, not only the stress of just surviving, but the stress of not letting your buddies down. And I think that is a lot of what, went in with this sort of thing. Not that Obie was not a great pilot, because indeed he was, but there's this constant, high level competition going on, and in the end, and you'll hear him say this, if you read Bud Anderson's book, there's almost a whole chapter devoted to Obie O'Brien, and it's not flattering.
No,
they butted heads. They were two opposite guys in every sense of the word. Yeah. And, Obie was a hard drinking, hard partying, out until dawn, drinking and showing up drunk to go fly. I mean, all this sort of stuff. He was, there needs to be a movie, there really ought to be a movie.
We call it the wrong stuff.
The wrong
Right. The hungover stuff.
Exactly.
Stuff. Fine, I'll play the part. No, sorry.
Featuring Ray Harris Jr.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and jump into the clips here. I've got about probably 4 or 5 clips, and they've all got some great stuff in it. So we'll go ahead and get started here. This is one of the questions that was just asked of Obie at this point was, what were some of the tactics that you used when you flew, and how did you avoid getting shot down? This might be one of those questions we talked about, Tony, where they were whoppers, where you're like, why did we ask that question?
It might have been Obie that looked at me that way.
Yeah. Well, here's his response to that.
Well, the best thing to do to avoid being shot down is you don't go. But you've got to go. The best thing is that if you see the other guy first, you've got half the battle you've already won right there. If you see him first, then you can either get away from him if he's coming at you, or you think he's going to take a path at you, or you can position yourself to destroy him. This is what you seek. Therefore, early recognition of the enemy is the primary thing. The second thing is get in close, but don't get so damn close you make a fool of yourself by accident. Because that happens, and it happens to more people than you can shake a stick in. They had heard that preached to RAF. You said, get close, get close. I think maybe they're rationing ammunition or something, because they want to get within about 50 yards and open fire. Well, hell, those guns were synchronized to cross at about, I think it was about 300 feet out there, about 100 yards or something like that. But you don't have to get 25 yards behind. Besides that, the pieces you shoot off come back, and somebody's going to get hit with the pieces, and we lost a lot of guys. I lost my best flight leader collision with debris because he got too close. And so I think if you can just get a little bit of thinking is as good as anything. Just open fire when you think you can hit him. Get close enough to that. But don't ram the damn gun barrels down his throat and pull the trigger. You can kill him just as easy at 100 yards as you can at 75 yards or 50 yards. The only other tactic that I know of is be ready. Just be mentally prepared that you want to kill him. That's the only reason you're over there. It's to destroy him. So to keep that in your mind. You're not over there to drink beer and play with the girls. It's later on. You get that tiny crowd first. Therefore, that's all you have to do. And most of them, I've never heard anybody have too much of a problem with that.
That was
First
awesome.
of all, I know the audio is a little bit weaker on this one, and we'll try to get that pumped up a bit. But yeah. He has some great matter of fact, comments on certain things. What were you going to say, Tony?
Just a couple of things. One is just funny about, drinking and girls. He goes, "You're not there to get your drink and do it." And he goes, "That's for later on." So he doesn't dismiss it entirely. No. He just says, just don't be doing that while you're up in the plane.
It's got its place.
It's got its place.
Yeah. I grew up on Air Force bases, and my dad would take me to anyway. So I got to talk to pilots, even though I was a kid. And the one thing I picked up on was, one, because it's an air battle, it happens very fast. You can make plans, but once you make contact, there goes plans. But he's right. Absolutely. Just be ready for something. And the other thing, and I learned this as a kid, and I applied it to sports because I'm not a soldier, but for those pilots, and you guys, I'm sure you've run across this as well, you have to be able to react so fast. To think is to do. There should be no say, "Oh, I should turn." No, the second you begin to think it, the hand should be, the body should be moving or whatever. But it's just being able to react faster than the other person. And I can't imagine flying, fighting at those speeds, passing around the G-forces. My heart would be pumping. Again, I know I come across as so macho, but I am not a warrior. Those guys, I am awe-inspired by them.
And something else that is just like a biological function that's really important for a pilot are their eyes. I remember Bud Anderson, Ryan and I had a chance to have a drink with Bud Anderson in Houston for the Wings Over Houston show. And he said this when we were talking to him, and he also wrote out in his book, he talked about how good his vision was. He had 20/10 vision.
Right.
He wasn't colorblind. And he said he could see little specks way out there, and he was a flight leader by this time. He'd say, "Okay, 12 o'clock, whatever." And a bunch of the guys on the radio would be like, I don't see what you're talking about.
Right.
And it hit him. He's like, I can see those little specks before a lot of my fellow pilots could. And then he could maneuver and get in position to shoot him down. So, and we also interviewed somebody who flew P-47s, and he was saying the same thing. There was one time they're going to get into a dogfight. And he was telling these guys, "Hey, 3 o'clock high up there. Do you guys see it?" And none of the other guys could see it. And you could hear his frustration during the interview. Right. It's like, how can you guys not see that? They're right there. So I thought that was interesting that he led with when you got to be able to see them first.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I'd be on the ground crew because I have horrible vision. I'm not wearing my glasses, but you both look. I don't know how you look. I've never really zoomed in, but but that's one of the skill sets, right? I remember when I worked a place, a guy was applying to the Air Force Academy. He got in and he had incredible vision, and it's one of the skills that you need, or you won't be up there very long. But again, but because I grew up on Air Force bases, I have a love-hate with pilots because they're just so damn cocky, but they can normally back it up. They're like, I just want to punch you in the face, but I know you can take my girl in a second. But that comes with the territory, right? You've got to be cocky to be able to fly really fast, to do all these amazing things, and be ready for combat at the same time. It's just it's just what's needed for the job.
Obi talked about, and I didn't put it in any of these clips, but there was a clip that he talked about where you were under so much stress when you were flying you could be forgiven for losing a battle, but you could not be forgiven for not seeing somebody first.
Yes.
And he said that they would get back from their missions, and his jacket would be crusty, salty from the sweat.
Yeah.
And it was just like it was just white with sweat. And it's just unbelievable amounts of stress on these guys.
There's and just one real quick thing, Ray. And that I remember that quote where he said, "You can be forgiven for losing, but you can't be forgiven for getting jumped."
That's
and
right.
that has applications for life, for the business world, for a bunch of things. If your company is working their ass off to get a bid on something or to take a product out, and they don't get it because they were outcompete by someone else, fine. But if they didn't get it because you didn't have your stuff together, because you didn't dot I's and cross T's, and that's on you. And that's kind of, to me, I'm fascinated when some of these translate from what they do on the battlefield to, everyday life. But
it does apply, doesn't it?
Exactly. And tying what you just said, Tony, to what Ryan said a second ago, the most important thing, everything I've read when you're talking to a GI, you don't want to let your friends down. The people right next to you mean more to you than that colonel, that general, that whatever, because they're doing the same shit, that you are. And if you let them down or they let you down, everybody's going to die. So, and you're right. You've got to have that loyalty and that you just, for right now, they're your entire world. And when you switch to a different unit, it's going to happen all over again, but that's just the nature of combat. You got to look out for each other. And you're right, Tony. I do like applying lessons of combat, lessons of war to life, because, and not to be cynical or anything like that, but there are things that can be picked up and perspectives that can be appreciated that you can apply this to the civilian life.
100%. Ryan and I run into that all the time with the people we interview. Especially the people who have experienced really intensely stressful things, and they'll drop a little nugget on you, and it's like, that's something to remember for just everything, not just what they experienced.
Exactly. And the one, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut anybody up, but the one thing that I always find when you read about a pilot, when you watch a documentary or whatever, the actual battles are pretty short. They've only got so many bullets in the plane. There's only so much fuel or whatever, that kind of stuff. But it's all the times in between the actual, depressing of the gun. It's all tension. Like Ryan was saying, it's all tension. It's all fear. It's all adrenaline. But the actual, when you just zoom right down to it, it's not long, but it's in those moments that the battle was won or lost, and then it affects the larger war. And again, my hat's off to people like that. That guy seemed like a smart ass, but someone I'd like to hang out with at the same time.
Yeah.
But we need people like that.
Yep. Yeah. He's accomplished. You can afford to be a smart ass when you've done some stuff, and he has. And so if I can summarize like these rules that he had, they were basically see him first, be vigilant, get close, but not too close.
Yeah.
I like that.
For sure.
All right.
All right. Well, let's move on. We'll to the second clip here. In this clip, he's asked the question, what was your role in your flight's success, in your flight group success?
Okay, that main thing, if everybody's there in station formation, you got a good shot at delivering 46 airplanes cocked, ready to go in the target area. That's about half of it. The second thing is to keep your eyes open, stay alert. I mean, just remember, flying that airplane's easy. You don't even do that. All you got to do is 2 fingers, just hold on the stick like that, and that'll get you there. But you want to keep that neck swiveled and looking, and look, and look, and look, and look. And it is disgusting when the flight leader has to call out that they're being attacked. It is. And the guys behind you are supposed to see. And if they don't, you know damn good and well that they weren't doing their job right. And that's an early detection of the opposition is the second contribution you can make. And the third thing is that once you've seen him do something about it, don't just sit there and whistle. Just go kill him. Quick as you can.
That guy, you can tell he's been there. He's rattling it off, and
he ain't playing.
He's not. Sorry. He's got that look of determination in his eyes. Like, by God, go do something about it. Don't just sit there and yell about it on the radio. Go do it. Take off.
I was a little intimidated by that one. That guy's intense. He's intense. Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. No, but he's right. You got to be paying attention, and it's a team effort or something bad's going to happen.
So in this, as we just mentioned, he flew with Chuck Yeager. We've already gone over that. And Chuck Yeager was actually shot down. Most people don't know this, but he was shot down during World War II on a mission to Bordeaux, France, which was, I think, their unit's first sortie to that region. Okay, this was in March of '44, I believe. And in his own biography, Yeager, called Yeager, he chronicled the event in high detail and how he actually hid in a farmer's barn after he was shot down. Right. He actually made his way to a farmer's barn. And I can't remember, was it a French girl or someone?
I was going to say there's a little bit of a love story in there too. There's definitely a French girl that helped out. But please continue. Girl.
Yep. And so she ended up getting him in touch with the French underground, and they pulled him out, and they basically got him into the underground, and he made his way across France to the Pyrenees and hiked over the Pyrenees into Spain and made it to Spain, and then made his way back from there to England, and was back in England a few months later and back to flying again. Yeah, because he had more planes that he shot down after he got back to base.
That's incredible. Yeah.
You know,
he's like, yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, it's these guys, are just machines.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, and you probably said, did you enjoy your vacation walking across the mountains? Okay, jump in the plane and go back to work.
Yeah, how was that French girl, huh? Yeah, was she pretty hot?
go back to work. Yeah, sorry.
So, by the end of the war, as I mentioned, he would end up with over 12 planes shot down, to his credit, by war's end. But in this point, in this clip here, Obi's going to talk about that mission whenever Yeager was shot down.
Right.
The day we lost Chuck Yeager, I guess that was sticking my throat. I don't know why. He's still around.
He was at the time of the interview.
We were had a mission going down to Bordeaux, France. Now, nobody had ever been to Bordeaux. So that's a long way from Leicester, England, down to Bordeaux, France. And my flight, somebody had to abort after takeoff because of mechanical difficulties with an aircraft. And Chuck Yeager was signed up that day to fly spare for the squadron. So each squadron always had a couple of spares flying around to fill in, so that we anticipate to make up for these losses that we knew were going to occur because of mechanical difficulties. Everything's not going to work right. That's all there is to it. But Yeager was flying and filling in as number 4 and with us, and a very fine officer. Russ Spicer, general officer, he's dead now, but Russ Spicer was a full colonel, and he came down and took over our group a few days before this Bordeaux mission, and we were escorting B-24s, and the B-24s had a hard time handling that altitude. They really did. They were just, I guess, basically
easy
just a tough airplane to do it with. And they were straggling back there. They were not holding their own formation close enough and tight enough. If you get a box of bombers that's hanging back about 10 miles behind this bunch up here, then these are the ones those stragglers are the ones the Germans are going to attack. So anytime you see an outfit straggling, the first thing you do, you send somebody back to make sure they're okay. Well, old Robespierre, Lucky Pierre, back you go to take care of these straggling B-24s. Well, when I got there, when I pulled up the 24th, everything looked normal. I couldn't see anything. But I made 180 and pulled up on the 24's right wing side up out there. And it just got into position, and somebody called brake. And I think it was Yeager called the brake. So I broke, and when I broke, a brake consists of changing your direction and your attitude, and change everything you can change. I mean, the throttle, anything, but do something different. So we were coming around the big circle, and I picked up a 190 and got him just right and took him down to I shot pieces off of him almost as big as you are. And he's going into the 1010 Southern cast down there. So I had to pull up because I didn't know anything about how thick it was or anything about it. So I came back and I just claimed a damaged aircraft. And then when I got back, the weather as usual was bad in England. I had to land at some RAF base that night. And interesting evening before it was all over. So the next day I got up to Leiston to tell them it. And that's when I found out we not only lost Chuck Yeager, we'd also lost Russ Spicer, both are prominent officers. Yeager's very competent. And later on, we visited, and he wanted me to fly with him, and I just kept putting it off. He finally told me, he said, Obie, I've got a letter from somebody there in Bordeaux or near wherever it was about that mission that day. And he said, it confirms that 190 hit the ground down there. And I said, well, yeah. He said, I'll give you the letter if you fly with me. So I said, okay. So I went and flew with him. And he did. He had the letter. And this guy that wrote the letter was a dentist who was an amateur historian. And what he had done, he'd run around there in France picking up pieces of memorabilia of airplanes. And he had guns out of Yeager's 51 and stuff like that. But he had the skinny on this German who was in the 190 and had a picture of him. A very nice looking young man. Of course, he's dead within there he is. But that was confirmation that that one went down. It wasn't just a damage, but it didn't make any difference. I didn't need any more. All you have to do is get 5, and you're in the Federations Association. Hell, that's all. I didn't have to put in for it.
Yeah.
Damn.
So just to reiterate, I know the audio is a little weak and everything, but so Obie is on this mission with Chuck Yeager, and they get told to break. They get into a scuffle with some FW-190s, which is the other main fighter of the German Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And Obie shoots down a 190. And well, he doesn't know it at the time. He follows it down to the lower cloud deck, but it disappears in the cloud deck. And he's like, I don't know anything about this region. I'm not going in after him. So I don't know if I got him or not, but he was damaged.
Yeah.
Later, and he gets a probable for that. Later on, though, Chuck Yeager finds out after the war that this guy actually did die, and you got this letter from this German or this French dentist over in France that he had recovered all this information in the plane and all that kind of stuff. So Obie is the guy that shot down the FW-190 that shot down Chuck Yeager.
Yeah.
Damn.
So it's pretty cool to be sitting there talking to a guy like that is, part of history in that manner. So go ahead, Tony.
I was just going to say, he talked about the weather, and every veteran that we spoke to who flew in the European theater of operations talked about the weather, and we're like, yeah, weather sucks, whatever. And it really wasn't.
You guys whine all the time.
Oh, I know. Suck it up. It's a little cloudy. You fly
Madonnas.
Ooh, clouds.
It wasn't until Masters of the Air came out last year that we had a number of people on our podcast, including the author of Masters of the Air, Donald Miller, where you heard and read accounts about what bad weather meant. And it turns out the statistics show that there were as many and maybe more men and materiel lost to accidents associated with weather than there was combat over Europe. And
absolutely.
So it was more than just, the weather's crappy. It killed as many men as the Germans did.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've read tons of accounts and there would be no air support this day because of weather. I'm like, what are you, a bunch of pansies? But no, it is because I'm a civilian. I don't know any better until you read enough to go, no, it can in many different ways make the mission for the pilots too risky, not just more risky, but not to the point where it's not worth it to send them up. And right, there's tons of accidents. And let's be honest, these planes cost money to train these men, cost money, the fuel, the bullets, and not to be, whatever, but it costs money, and you have to factor those things in.
No, there's a calculus in war, and if you don't adhere to it, you will lose that war. So you have to think about those things as well. And absolutely, 10 highly trained men and a bunch of bombs and everything else, the aircraft itself. So at any rate, it's just I have yet, Ryan, I think, interviewed someone who flew at the ETO who didn't say something about the freaking weather. It was that bad all the time, almost every day. It's amazing that they got as much done as they did, given how bad the weather was, to be honest.
Yeah. Who was it that we interviewed that was B-24 or B-17 pilot? And they talked about, when you take off, you have to circle as everyone takes off and gets and gathers up together so they can go over as one force rather than one drawn out 2 hour long string of planes,
Right.
And they talked about how you get up pea soup, and you can't, and you're supposed to be flying in formation. You're looking for the lead plane that's painted in pink polka dots because that's supposed to be the leader plane.
Yep.
And you can't see it.
Yeah.
And then you're flying along, and you got this guy here that's literally 5 foot off your wingtip.
Right.
And you're getting buffeted around, and you're trying to watch and they'd have so many collisions that would happen over England. And it was just, he said that was by far the worst part of the whole thing.
And second to that was navigation. So here you have Obi twisting and turning, shooting down a 190, and then he's got to reorient himself and figure out how to get his ass back. And he mentions the weather was bad. He did not land at his own aerodrome.
Yeah.
And that was
somewhere
really super common. They just looked for the cliffs of Dover, like, oh, thank God, I'm over friendly territory.
Yeah.
And then tried to find some place to land. And then the next day they could work out where the hell they were.
Yeah. The number of times that they'd find a house or they'd find a village, place to call to wherever, and then a Jeep would come and pick them up or get a ride. But, it was very common. I mean, out of all of the places to make your air base, the UK isn't the one I'd pick, but that was the one that was still standing, and God love him for it. So, can I just say last thing about Obi? As I'm watching this guy, and he's just so matter of fact, and I get that, but I'm sitting there thinking, this guy could kick my ass, hit on my mom, and insult me all at the same time, and he wouldn't break a sweat. I mean, that guy was just intense.
Probably hit on your daughter, Ray.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you're.
I don't want to get involved. No, I'd be just like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to put on a dress? Whatever. No, but he was just, but you can tell, I mean, when you fought and killed and gotten through that, I mean, I guess, and I don't know, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but you can just tell he has a different take on life. Yeah. It's just matter of fact, boom, 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 and move on. What's your problem? I don't know. He's just tough as shit.
When we interviewed General Livingston, who got the Medal of Honor in Vietnam, he came back and he conquered the business world, essentially. The guy ends up owning several banks and everything. And he's like, believe me, after you went through, a combat like he did, where he almost got his leg shot off with a 50 caliber machine gun.
Damn.
I mean, and got the Medal of Honor for all that he did that day.
And he got a Silver Star the month before, but please continue, Ryan.
Yeah. There ain't nothing that's daunting after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing that puts it in perspective. Go ahead.
I think we should all be like, if we're having a bad day, you should go, could be worse. I could be storming Normandy, I could be storming the beaches. Yeah. So maybe it's not so bad, whatever. So, and before I forget this, Tony, you said something about 30 minutes ago, and I don't remember what it was. And it made me want to say to you, I hope I pass away before you do, because when I get to the part about me in your autobiography, I'm sure it's going to be mean. It's going to make me cry. So I hope I go before you do it, but that's all I wanted to say. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's badass. My autobiography could be something like, a-holes I met along the way.
That's right. Chapter 1, Ray. Chapter 2, Ray. Chapter 3, Ryan. Chapter 4, Ray.
Exactly. And then the old adage goes, well, if everyone else is an a-hole, then maybe you're the a-hole.
Yeah, right. Aren't you supposed to aspire to your friend group, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
There you go.
Hey, if you want to be an a-hole, hang out with us, and we'll make it happen.
Oh my gosh.
So one of the things that Obi mentioned whenever he flew back that night, he had to land at some RAF base. He said, yeah, that was an interesting evening.
I caught that.
So he actually, we'll get to that clip in a second. He goes back and he tells us about what happened that night. But first of all, one of the things we got into with him was actually how many did he actually end up with at war's end?
Okay.
How many enemy kills, to your credit, did you end up with by war's end?
Me?
Yes.
I have 7 altogether.
7.
I think the good book says 5.5. The good book's wrong. But 7 though. But that's kind of hard to get. Really, it takes a long time. I was flying roughly 11 missions a month, and I flew 77 missions. And I can't remember a time that we ever made contact with the Germans that we didn't have with a firefight of some kind. That's all there is to it. So we're really kind of lucky. And the group did remarkably good. That group, I think they're about number 2 scoring in England, and they were not in England all that long.
Yep.
The old 56th group and the 4th group, some of those outfits had been there a long time before we got there. But we got to go to the target area. You're going to get some action there. That's all there is to it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, very good answer.
Okay.
I was wondering, do you remember your 5th kill, the one that made you an ace?
No, I don't.
Okay.
In those days, nobody was interested in being worrying too much about being an ace. My worry was when I'd come back. Usually what happened, I'd get a few days off in a row. I'd go down to London and have a good time, me and somebody else, and come back. The first thing I want to know is how was Anderson doing? Damn, he would always shoot down 1 or 2 airplanes while I'm gone. And therefore, there's no way in God's green earth that we're going to end up having about the same number of airplanes. And hell, he's a good friend of mine. He's a fine man, no kid yourself. He's a wonderful, wonderful pilot. He is the kind of guy that you could build an Air Force around. But he was lucky as hell. The Germans would always show up on missions that Anderson flew, I swear to God. And I wasn't quite that fortunate. There had plenty of them around, but I didn't want to see him getting out ahead of him. But as you well know, he got about 16 airplanes to his credit, and I got 7, so there's a hell of a difference there. And of course, he flew 2 tours, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I want to just add one thing real quick, Ryan. So we talked about Obi being featured in both Bud's book and Chuck's book as kind of an irascible character, not in the best of terms. They would end up becoming friends later as they went to reunions and things like this.
Aww.
They would end up having this close relationship. So when he said that Bud Anderson's a good guy and all that stuff, he wasn't being fake or phony. During the war, and you just heard him, because that competitive nature, that's probably why they had friction. It's like, damn it, every time I go out and get drunk on the town, I come back and he shot 2 more Germans, and it made him angry.
But
It just showed you the esprit de corps these guys had, that they wanted to be up there fighting and shooting Germans, even if it meant that they could die. But he would, and it was independently verified on other sites as well, that Yeager and Bud Anderson, these guys, they would end up forming a close relationship after the war.
nice. So there's hope for you and Ryan. That's great. That's
there's no hope.
Really.
There's not. No,
it requires a degree of magnanimity that we don't.
Neither
possess.
one of you
That's not
have.
gonna
No, we
happen.
don't possess it. We figured that out. Yeah, we don't possess.
I tried, people. I tried. All right.
Well, one of the things that's kind of interesting, he talked about how he'd get a few days off, he'd drive down to London or go down to London. Well, one time he borrowed Bud Anderson's car to go down to London. And what did he do? Wrecked his car, totaled it.
God.
Then he got
Jeez.
rip roaring drunk one night and went out and,
He can.
and he owed him for his car like the whole rest of the war, I think, or something like that. 'Cause-
So he can fly with 2 fingers, but he can't drive a car.
Exactly.
Come on.
Right.
Come on.
Oh, well, as speaking of flying with 2 fingers, remember what happened to Obi in his tent?
Yes.
He was in his tent with some of his squadron mates, and their one of their flight leaders or something like that was messing around with his 45 and shot Obi in
the
their
hand.
tent.
My
It was
God.
in the
In his
forearm
arm.
or
That's
the
right.
bicep. It was his bicep, I thought.
Yep.
Right.
And
Damn.
he said, so he got shot. So they take him to the hospital, and he goes, I didn't know what they were doing at the time, but now I figured out what they were doing. He goes, they basically just bandaged him up and sent him back. And he said, if he figured out later that if it doesn't hit the bone, they don't operate on you or anything like that. They just, it's a flesh wound. And so they wrap it up and everything. So he came back, and he went and kept flying as a one-armed ace.
And he had one arm because he had some nerve damage from that prevented him from having full use of that hand. And he never told anyone because he wanted to keep flying.
Damn. I'm not a man.
Bunch of young guys hanging out in the tent, playing around with a gun. Actually, shoots one of the dudes.
Which could totally, can you imagine? I'm surprised it didn't happen more often.
Oh,
honestly.
I bet you it did happen more often.
You think so?
Well, I'm just trying to imagine. Hey, were you hurt in the war, Grandpa? Yeah. Not in the way you think, but I was shot. Yeah, I was shot. Okay.
Death by misadventure, right? That's it, right there.
Jeez.
So,
Anyway,
in this clip here, Obi's going to talk about his impression of the Luftwaffe pilots.
Yeah, we're scared to death of every one of them, for Christ's sake. When you get in behind one of them, and you're lucky, you got the position and everything, you get a few shots off, and out he comes. you don't know if you've got a general officer who's made up his mind he ain't not going to get blown out of the sky, or a brand new kid who's green that wants to stay alive, because they're both going to do the same thing. They're going to pop that canopy and get out of that airplane. And the hell with this damn dogfighting. That's somebody else another day. You're not going to catch me in the same position. Now, you being the aggressor, you're not going to let him get away with that, because the next time he may not be in front of you. He may be behind you. So that's the way that game works.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of little nuggets of wisdom there. It's pretty great to hear from somebody like him.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's
Are you
amazing.
gonna say something, Tony?
Yeah, I'm really hoping that your last clip is the one I'm thinking of.
It is. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure it
good.
is. Yeah.
It's my favorite clip.
All right. So as Obi mentions that at the mission where he flew to Bordeaux and he shot down he thought he wasn't sure, but he knew he heavily damaged the F-190 that shot down Yeager.
Mhm.
He ends up flying back in this pea soup, lands in his RAF base, and ends up going to the bar there nearby.
As you
And
do.
runs into this in walks this other fighter pilot. Obviously he's in a different squadron and stuff, and because he's the one that's the outcast, Obi is. He's the different guy there.
Yeah.
And he's talking and stuff like that. This guy and him start talking and everything. And turns out that this guy, his name is Boleslaw Michael Gladich.
Mhm.
And he doesn't know who this guy is, never heard of him, whatever.
Right.
So
Right.
I'll play for you his story first, how Obi tells it. Then I'll fill you in on who this guy was after Obi finishes his story here.
All right.
Come on, here we go. Is it gonna go?
Damn near got myself whipped one.
He said, I almost got myself whipped one night.
When I came in that night, I was telling you, I came up when I lost Chuck Yeager that day. Well, Bob Moore and I got into England that night in very bad weather. It was lousy. And we landed at an English base named Ford. And a flight of Jubs came in, and 4 of them. And one of them went out here and crashed, and 3 of them landed. I thought that was rather unusual.
Judge, you mean the Thunderbolts?
Yeah.
Okay.
P-47. That was an unusual demonstration of how it handled the aircraft. But the guys that got out of the airplane were kind of interesting. They had on RAF flying suits with American flying jackets and captain's bars up here. So we were up there having a few drinks at the bar that evening, and I got to talk to this one old boy, and he had never seen the P-51, and I hadn't messed around with the Jugs either. And so we got to talking, and I told him, I said, hell, that 51 will eat you up. And he said, I don't think so. I said, well, I think it will. And I said, let's go down tomorrow morning and find out. He said, that's a good deal. I'd like to do that.
God.
And so after we talked like this for about an hour or so, this other guy was sitting there with him, and he didn't have much to say. And they left, and one of these American boys came over to me, and he said, you know who you're talking to? And I said, no, I don't know anything like that. He said, that's Michael Gladich. And I said, oh? He said, yeah. He said, he's an ace in the Polish Air Force, in the French Air Force, in the RAF, and now he's in the 56th group. And I think he's an ace in every damn one of them. I said, well, I think so. I thought, well, 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to find out. So I went down that flight line about 6 o'clock and took a look at those airplanes. And on the side of Mike Gladich's airplane, there was a bunch of black German crosses. Probably must have been about 15 or so across there, maybe more than that. And I looked at my airplane, the only thing I had on it was serial numbers. I thought maybe I better go ahead and get out of here now. So I knew what I thought I could do, but I never was sure how it would work out.
Oh my God. There's always somebody better than yourself. Always
Yeah.
remember that.
I love that. I saw all those
right.
black crosses on the plane, but I look at mine and I saw a serial number.
I got the hell out of there as soon as I could.
And he
I think
did.
I'll
He
go.
left.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
no-showed the guy. He just took off. He's like, I'm out of here.
Ghosted him. Yeah.
Ghosted him. Yeah. So
Jeez.
who is this guy that he's talking about? Because I had never heard about him at all until we interviewed Obi. And so
Right.
this guy's nickname is Killer Mike.
Yep.
Okay.
God.
He
Right.
was a Pole who was actually graduated summa cum laude from the Polish Air Force Academy
Wow.
and was commissioned on September the 1st, 1939, the day the war started in
Wow.
Poland, no less.
Right.
He also flew with, like he's mentioned, the French Air Force and claimed several unverified victories there. He had several run-ins with this German Me-109 ace named George Peter Eder, who had shot Gladych up on 3 different occasions but let him go. Yeah,
Gentlemen?
so
Wow.
it was one of those chivalrous moments where the Luftwaffe, he shot him just all up to hell. And he flew up
Jeez.
next to him, looked at him, waggled his wings at him, and took off and let him go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so in the RAF one time, he also, Gladych almost shot down Winston Churchill's plane mistakenly.
I got grounded for it.
He was grounded for that. Okay.
Right.
Later flew in the Army Air Corps, and he had 17 verified kills in the U.S.
Wow.
Army Air Corps. He reported that on March the 8th of 1944, while escorting bombers to Berlin, he engaged 3 Focke-Wulf 190s. He was low on fuel, and he attempted to disengage after shooting down one of the 190s, but the other 2 fighters boxed him in and tried to get him to force him down to land.
Mhm.
As he approached the German airfield, configured for landing, basically his wheels down, Gladych suddenly opened fire on the airfield with his remaining ammo. And the German flak gunners responded, but missed Gladych and shot down the 2 190s that had a bust.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So
Oh my God.
When he crossed the English coast, he ran out of fuel and he was forced to bail out across the channel.
he crashed in the channel and swam 200 yards onshore.
I'm not a man.
There's
They're
more.
superhuman. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a trip that you mentioned this, Ryan, because I just saw a YouTube documentary on him last night, and
my
and it
gosh.
wasn't in preparation for this. So why they call him Killer? He's amongst a bunch of men who shot down Germans, but a lot of the pilots would objectify the plane and not the person flying it. They thought about flying and shooting down planes, and they intentionally tried to detach themselves from the pilot, the person they were killing. But Gladych had a visceral hatred for Germans because of what they did to his country in Poland.
Yeah.
And in fact, when he didn't get a chance to fight against the Germans in Poland because he graduated right when the war started and didn't have a chance to get into a plane. Some of the pilots took off in planes and they landed in Romania. And the Romanians were going to intern him for the rest of the war. You got to remember, Romania ended up siding with the Nazi Germany.
Right.
He killed the Romanian guard that was watching him, and then made his way to France, and then fought for the French Air Force, where a piece of his plane blew up and hit him in the head, and he had this horrific scar across his face. He was
If you look at his Wikipedia and his cockpit photo, he's got this big gas
Oh.
scar. He looks like the classic
Oh.
German fighter
just a
pilot with
scary dude. And then there was
Yeah.
someone from the Gestapo who was trying to find him as when France fell and he was trying to make his way to England. Then he killed that person, and he almost died in a fight with this guy from the Gestapo. Overtook him, killed him, took his wounded ass to England. And those 16 or 17 victories that he claimed fighting for the United States were probably significantly higher than that, because flying for the United States, he got permission to do that from Gabi Gabreski, who was another American Polish pilot that brought him into the 56th Fighter Squadron.
illegally.
But illegally, he was
Right.
never paid by the United States military until after the war. The pilots in his squadron would actually take donations, take money in a cap so that he could buy food. And because because Killer Mike loved fighting in the 56, because there's a lot of action, he loved the P-47, he would understate the number of kills that he had because he didn't want to sensationalize himself, because he was afraid that it would rise to the level where the authorities would say, why is this Polish guy fighting in one of our units? This dude was a badass of the First Order.
And he intentionally lowered his number of kills because he did not want to be promoted up to be a manager. He
Right.
wanted to stay in the fighting ranks and keep shooting down planes. After the war, he ended up being recruited by the CIA and
Why not?
was involved. He was involved in the black market over in Europe and everything. His brother ended up in a gulag. Okay.
Mhm.
So he goes over saying he's an American soldier, an officer, and he goes into this camp and rescues his brother and gets him out of the camp. and
That's
gets him back over to the
amazing.
West.
So what all this means is, Ray, is they're quite literally, Obie O'Brien ran his mouth off at the bar at the scariest pilot in the Allied Air Force.
Oh my
who
God.
not only was an ace of an ace of an ace of an ace,
Yeah.
but physically killed people to work
Yeah.
his way across Europe. And even amongst killers, his nickname amongst the killers was Killer
Yeah.
Mike.
Was
It's like,
Killer
well,
Mike.
you don't want to. Well, first of all, I think when you translate his name to English, I think, and I mean, you can correct me on this, I think it's James Bond. But more than that, just alone, I mean, we all know a map of Europe. To get from Romania to, I think you said France.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's this country, I don't know if you know, it's called Germany. It's in between those two. Did he go through Germany? He probably fucking
He
did go
may
around
have.
He did go through it, you know.
and killing people along the way. But the point is, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
These
amazing.
are legendary guys. These are
Yeah.
legendary guys that,
Yeah.
you know, after the war, he moves to the US,
Yeah.
moves to Seattle. He gets a PhD in psychotherapy,
Oh, dear God.
and he
God.
becomes a psychotherapist for people. Okay.
Right.
Can you imagine this dude sitting in a chair across
All
from you? while you're
scarred up
talking
and
about
gnarly
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting involved in incorporating yoga into the psychotherapy.
Sure.
And he learns to be
Sure.
called a yogi, which is like a master of yoga. And
Yeah.
this guy who was a real yogi over in the Far East enamored him with with yoga techniques and stuff.
Yeah.
And he agreed to come back to the US and practice it and incorporate it into his practice. And so
yeah.
crazy, just craziness.
I thought you were going to say he went over to the east and he killed that guy because clearly he's killing
There
everybody.
can only be
No,
only one yogi, man. There's two of us. You're going down.
Right.
I was a killer and now I'm a yogi. Thank you. I mean,
But I had
no,
to kill
just
a yogi. To
Well, he
be
told
the
the yogi, he told the guy, he said, well, if I'm going to do this and become a master, I probably need to quit my day job, which was at the, being a soldier. Also, he was
right.
doing that at the time before he got his PhD and stuff. And again, the yogi was like, no, you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I drop bombs on people and I kill people during, and the yogi was like, nah, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Just punch in, punch out.
Maybe he was just afraid of him. I don't know. But,
yeah, no, I will tell you whatever you want to hear. I swear to God, I will. Yeah.
So
I'm
No,
flexible.
I could pick-
Ha ha.
Yeah,
I'm flexible.
yeah.
So what does it say when you say earlier, Ray, that this guy, Obie O'Brien, was this irascible character, gave you the pucker factor, gave us the pucker factor,
Yeah.
and then Mike is so scary, Killer Mike, that he pucker factors the pucker factor guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Got out puckered.
I don't know where I'm at on the ladder, but I know it's nowhere near the top, and I've accepted that. I mean, Killer Mike probably sucks all the air out of the room. You know what I'm saying? So good God. Anyway.
I mean, think about Obie. He's probably stewing all night long, like, oh
Yeah.
shit. Oh, I
Yeah.
gotta meet this guy in the morning. And he gets, I mean, what do you do whenever you're nervous as hell? You're up early, right? You're up early.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go down there and check things out. He gets down there, sees the planes, like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Right.
Gone.
Takes off. That's probably the earliest that he has ever taken off when he wasn't flying a mission his entire life.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but he had the maturity or the, whatever you want to call it to look at the guy's plane and go, yeah, I think I'll go ahead and take off now. I think I hear them calling me. I let the light on.
Time to
I gotta
saddle
go
up,
home. Yeah,
boys.
that's right. But again, extraordinary times brings out extraordinary people, or it brings out extraordinary aspects of people, like these two gentlemen we've been discussing, and that's amazing. I mean, it's sad that it takes war, but there are other things that can bring out greatness and people as well besides war.
Well, that was our last clip, Ray. We tossed
Yeah.
the mic back to you. We really appreciate you having us on as you do so graciously. And now many times we've been on your show a few times doing a few other subject podcasts, on
Yeah.
the top 5 World War II movies and everything. And I'm thinking maybe we ought to start doing this every year on Groundhog Day.
There we go. I like that.
I'll just-
that.
I'll add one more thing. So these people were people who lived in the neighborhoods that we lived in.
Mm.
We could drive to their house. These people live all around us. There are still amazing people that live around us that we don't really get to know well enough to understand what sort of experiences they had, during their life. And so we felt like the clips that we do and that we bring, to your audience, are emblematic of the interviews that we share, and that we weren't invited to some, SEAL Team 6 reunion to do this. These are just dudes and dudettes that you just sit in the grocery stores with. And it turns out that a lot of them have amazing stories. So get away from your screens, get out in front of people, get to know your neighbors, and who knows what they experience, because these are cats that just live down the road from us and rub shoulders with amazing people, or saw some horrific things that they had to kind of work through as they got older.
Absolutely. And Ryan, did you say earlier that this is in total? Is this your fourth or fifth time on the show? I can't remember.
Well, I know we came on your show around Thanksgiving of the first year of our podcast, which was around in 2021.
Okay.
So I think this is our fourth time.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the actual Thanksgiving episode.
Right. And then we did the top 5. But the point is, just to be safe, the next time y'all come on, because we got some stuff planned, I want the listeners to know, when y'all come back, let's officially call it the 5th time, you will be aces. So, congratulations. Ooh. Yeah. So
is this the gift you're going to give us? This is our gift?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ray's like, what gift? You guys are crazy. What are you talking about?
Don't give gifts. I get gifts. Come on. No, but
you got gifts. We gave you gifts.
No. That I appreciate it. Yeah. No. I appreciate the clips very much, especially the one that y'all had not done yet. So that was I thank you very much for that. And just going back to something that Tony said, you're right. You could be in a grocery store, you can be in the mall, in the library, whatever, and you could be bumping into someone who's like these people.
No idea.
And that's why you call your show The Warrior Next Door, because you have no idea. Just treat people with respect, right?
Amen.
Very true. Yes, sir.
All right. So we've got, and this is not a threat to the listeners, but we've got plans to do more shows together. So I hope you like this, and you'll be hearing from us sooner than November of next year. So Tony, Ryan, thank you very much for everything that you do. Again, you talk to the real deal. I just read books. So thank you for doing that. And we'll see you guys soon with another top 5 of something.
Sounds
thank you
good.
very much. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for coming on, guys.
Take care.
All right.